Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. I grew up in a household where we spent virtually all the time we had outside of school and chores at church. I'm from good Presbyterian stock, and my parents spent all their time, it seemed to us, for children at the church. They spent it in all kinds of ways, but there was always something to do. And my brothers and I, begrudgingly, were dragged along to all of these various activities. My parents, collectively, between the two of them, sang for 100 years in the choir, literally 50 apiece. They served on committees. They both were elders, serving on their version of the vestry, the session. And in the course of their time at Patterson Presbyterian Church, served on their session several times. They were deacons off and on. In the Presbyterian Church, that's a lay ordained position that is for the care of the community. And so my parents spent a lot of time organizing the deacons, getting meals to people, being with families in crisis. So they spent a lot of time doing that. When our church started a vibrant youth program when I was quite small, my parents, of course, were enlisted to help with the youth and the children, and so they served as leaders and Bible study teachers for the children, as table leaders at the meals, and when they were too exhausted to actually be one-on-one or in small groups with the children anymore, my mom was enlisted to help cook the meals for those evenings. She's still doing that at the ripe age of 85. Not every week, but periodically. My mom did the kinds of receptions for funerals and weddings. She was in the Women's Association. My parents were in the Mariners, which was a kind of fellowship group for couples. And the list goes on. And my brothers and I schemed that we would create a bumper sticker. But back in those days, this wasn't so easy to do. But we thought it should read on the back of our car, "Don't follow me unless you're going to church." Some of you might be able to relate, some of you children especially, because there are people in our own community who spend their lives giving their hearts, their gifts, their resources to God through St. Mark's, and thank God for them. And as I more than hinted, my brothers and I had a little bit of a tussle with them from time to time, especially my brothers, who, the older they got, the more resistant they were to following my parents to church for all these array of activities and offerings. But I've been reflecting on all that time spent giving themselves to that community and in love and service to that community, and especially for God, and the impact that has had on me as a human being and as a Christian. And what I learned watching and tagging along and even participating in their life of service was how to love and what it looks like when God has a claim on your life. Jesus is asked a question in this morning's gospel by his adversaries, the disciples of the Pharisees and the Herodians, between whom no love was lost normally, have teamed up in their common dislike of Jesus and their distrust of what he's up to, and their desire to get rid of him because of well, their distaste for his teachings at the very least, and their sense of threat at most. So they scheme to give a question to him that will get him in trouble. Knowing that many of the Jews have suspicion about Rome and a struggle and resentment with Rome, and especially with the having to pay a tax, they come to Jesus and they ask if it's lawful to pay taxes. And they know full well that if Jesus answered, yes, you must do that, then all those listening, and this was in the temple surroundings where this question was asked in a public setting, all the Jews gathered there would be angry and would take sides, they hoped, against Jesus. They also know that if he says, no, absolutely, you cannot, you have one loyalty, then, and you shouldn't pay the tax, you should resist the tax, then the political authorities will be enraged and scheme to take him down or have him arrested. So they feel they have him ensnared, but not so much. Jesus, in his wisdom, asks to see the coin that's used for the tax, the denarius. And so they bring that coin to him, and he finds this brilliant way both to expose their hypocrisy and to expose their being complicit in an exploitive economy, and to call the best out of them and those around them. So he says to them, give me the coin. Now notice that Jesus didn't go into his own pocket and pull out that coin, because Jesus was not participating in that exploitive economy. Jesus had a deep and complete loyalty to God. But they, the religious authorities, very quickly were able to produce such a coin. And Jesus says, whose head is this? Whose image is on this coin? And they say, it's the emperor's. And Jesus' response is, then give to the emperor the thing on which his image is placed. And give to God the things that are God's. When he uses the word image, he evokes from them and in them a very old, old text from their own tradition. One of the very first texts. That we are made in God's image. God's face, God's print is on us. God's claim is on us. And so if that's true, and it is, then all that we are, all that we have, all that we do is given back to God. We are the things that belong to God, to which Jesus refers. We and all our lives and all our gifts and all our treasure. My parents spent their lives in the church. My mom is still doing it, spending herself in love and service to God. How will we, made in God's image, with God's face pressed into us, spend our lives? How will we spend ourselves? It gets complicated and messy and confusing sometimes. And it's not without struggle. And all of us feel it. We feel both God's claim on our life and the pull of other loyalties all the time. And so every Sunday and in the life of our community, we get to practice what it looks like to spend all ourselves on God, to give all ourselves to God. We are entering today what we have grown to call the season of gratitude, a 6-week season in the life of our church where we practice the truth that all that we are and all that we have is God's, because God's image is on us. To practice what it means to be made in the image of a God who is generous beyond measure and who spends God's self on us day after day after day, moment by moment, year after year. We have opportunities in this season, and this year, new ways to practice the giving, the spending of self for God. The Stewardship Committee, beautifully led by Marty Farley, has come up with some wonderful ways to deepen in us our sense of gratitude and practice the way of offering generously back to God ourselves, spending ourselves on God. And I want to point them out to you. First of all, you couldn't have missed the tree of gratitude. This was plucked from Bob Shaper's backyard and trimmed in such a way that it would fit in our pulpit, jaws, as we so affectionately call it. Beautifully lit by Nathan Schrader. Both men have offered their creative gifts, spent themselves in this way to create an image for us for the season of gratitude. Now, right now, it looks a little spooky, like it might be for Halloween. In the season, normally in the fall, the leaves fall from the trees. We're going to turn that around in this season, and we're going to put leaves back onto the tree. We have these beautiful leaves, which will shine in the light that's lighting the tree. And each week, beginning next week, as you come into church, you'll be invited to have reflected throughout the week and come with one word of gratitude, one way that you have been blessed, one gift you've been freely given by God in that week, to write that word on the leaf and leave it in the basket at the table entering the church. At the offering, we will bring those baskets forward each week. And with the rest of the gifts that we offer, our treasure, the gifts of bread and wine, we will offer those leaves at the table. And then during the week, some of us will hang them on the tree, so when you come back the following week, you will see evidence of God's blessings and evidence of our gratitude hanging on the tree. And as the weeks go by, it will get fuller and fuller and fuller, a reverse of what normally happens in the fall. So we offer the gratitude to God in that way. Others have offered their creative gifts and offered themselves, have spent themselves in preparation for this season. When you came into church, you saw a table with some bookmarks on it. And I want to tell you about those as well. Our EFM group has spent themselves in gratitude this last Monday by creating a collect, which we prayed in place of the collect for purity at the front end of the service. And that collect has been printed on one side of these bookmarks for you to take home and pray throughout each week to practice your gratitude. On the flip side, there are 8 different sections of the prayers of gratitude that were written for this season by Lynn Marini. It's a kind of litany of thanksgiving, which we will be praying for the next 6 weeks. And you'll hear those, and we'll pray those in a moment. Each section of that has been put one section on each of these bookmarks. And we invite you, again, in practice of gratitude, to take one home with you. You can find your favorite and pray that prayer and add your own intercessions throughout the week to just continue to spend yourselves in gratitude throughout the week. And then, if you want to, you can collect them all, or You can bring them back and choose a new prayer to focus on in the next week. But these will be offered, and all are welcome to take one or more of these as you leave the church or as you come each week. And then on Consecration Sunday, which is on the 23rd of November, rather than the leaves with the gratitude on them, we write our gratitude in the form of our pledges. And we will do that, as we have for several years now, communally. And then those same baskets that collected our leaves of gratitude will collect those offerings and will present those at the table as we hear from Bishop Talton, who will be our preacher that morning. I invite you also to think about, throughout this season, how, in particular, your own life has been blessed as people have spent their love, God's love, on you, and as God has spent God's love on you. And I look forward with you to hearing from 4 members of our community who will tell their stories and engage the gospel. Parker Garrett and Matt Wright and Gerald Somerville and Ray Samoa will offer their sermons of gratitude and of challenge to us in this season of gratitude. God's image is on us, and we are made for generosity. And so through the season, we pay attention to all the ways God has spent God's love on us and all of God's invitation to offer it all back in gratitude. Amen.